All right, to give our guests more time and to take calls later in the hour, I'm going to skip this break. But there is a total collapse of confidence in the system. There are a bunch of big corporations that want monopolies, hoping that weaponized MSM and Hollywood garbage can suppress the public. The communist Chinese are openly at Davos saying, we'll keep Trump and America in line. Hollywood movies are now coming out where Trump is a terrorist, funded by the communist Chinese. That's on drudgereport.com today. This is so crazy. And they are completely freaking out. Now, I know that Mr. Dent, Harry Dent of harrydent.com, again, is a really smart fellow. I'm not going to get into his whole background, his degrees, and his best-selling books, and all the work he's done at Bain Capital, and you name it, and his best-selling book, The Demographic Cliff, which has accurately predicted, you know, that we have these downturns. My question to him is, can we turn this around? What does he make of what Trump's doing? What does he make of the moves he's making? But first off, since you've been holding for 5 minutes, listening to me rant, sir, you know, Happy New Year. Hadn't had you on since the year changed over. You've been hearing me rant. I mean, the Chinese are openly saying they're going to come into America. They're going to teach us how to censor the press. That's in the Wall Street Journal. They report this with a straight face, like, oh, thank you, Chinese communist murderers. It's like a Twilight Zone episode. And as you've reported, we're in much better stead than they are. The world's acting like they're the leader. So now that Trump's president, just a cornucopia of ideas, what is your global approximation of the state of the planet right now?
Well, number one, this is what it looked like back in the late 80s. Japan was the up-and-comer. Everybody thought they were going to surpass the United States and take over the world. And we said, no, Japan's going to have the greatest crash in history for the next decade. And the U.S. and Europe were going to do better than ever in the 1990s. So we're looking at demographics. We're looking at something economists don't understand. And we have the same thing with China today. China workforce is the only emerging country in the world that already has a declining workforce, and it declines even faster about 8 years from now, and they end up looking more like Japan. So China's near the top of its game. China's also overinvested, overexpanded more than any country in history by a mile. They've got so many empty condos and houses and office buildings and malls and railways and everything. China has the most extreme debt rise in the last decade. China is getting ready to blow. China's not going to be telling anybody what to do. They're going to be cleaning up their mess next decade. And by the time they do, their demographics are going to be failing even faster. So
in fact, there's the headline: the world's most populous country, China, is turning gray.
Yeah, I mean, this was the case for Japan back then. But
and they're having a brain drain too, aren't they?
Yeah, what's that?
A brain drain.
Yeah, I mean, well, and people are the most affluent, richest people are leaving the country and or getting their cash out as fast as possible. They don't trust their top-down government. They don't trust that, you know, this bubble. They've got the most expensive real estate in the world by far. Hong Kong makes Sydney, Australia, and London and San Francisco look cheap. So they've got a giant, big, bad, fat, ugly bubble, as Trump says. And it's the biggest bubble I've seen in history. This book, The Sale of a Lifetime, my new book that looks at every bubble in history, looks at all the bubbles around the world. They all look alike. They all grow exponentially. They all have a kind of an orgasmic final.
And by the way, Trump agrees with you on real estate. He says it's overvalued. And he's saying, you know, no more subsidies. They're saying that's horrible. Isn't this what we need?
No, the last thing we need, all of this quantitative easing and all these subsidies and tax favored things like real estate, all they've done is create a bigger bubble that would have occurred anyway in this, what I call this fall bubble boom season on our 80-year long-term model for the economy.
Sure. So what do you make of $2 trillion out of the stock market? What do you make of that? $2 trillion out of the stock market.
I think I was thinking it was going to peak late last year until Trump came along. He beat the polls and won, and then he beat the markets, who said he would be bad for the markets instead of good. The market's gone straight up ever since. This, to me, is that final orgasmic rally in the third stock bubble. Now, we've had 3 stock bubbles in a row. This has never happened in history because of so much stimulus from the government. Every time a bubble bursts, instead of restructuring the debt and getting real and cutting costs and doing the type of things normal businesses and even governments in the past do, they just throw money in the economy and create more bubbles. A bunch of money comes in the economy. It's going to go chase real estate and stocks again. And now we have a bigger stock bubble by far than ever, larger real estate bubbles in many cities, and extreme around the world, especially in places like China, London, and Australia. And these bubbles are going to burst. That's all bubbles do. And they burst twice as fast as they build. That's one of the principles in this book. The second thing is when they crash, half the crash will come in the first 3 months. When the smart money finally realizes this bubble's over, because they're playing it with leverage, they get out really quick. And we saw this in China last year. Their second stock bubble peaked and went down 45% in 3 months. The 1929 bubble did that.
And by the way, I mean, to your credit, you did predict a lot on the show, 6 months, a year out. Watch, China's the one to watch. They're the big bubble. And then some people are even saying, oh, Dent somehow caused this. No, it was, I mean, they wouldn't let stocks fall.
Exactly. No, well, the Chinese government's been buying their own stock market ever since. And
they will execute you in China if you criticize the stock market.
Yeah, oh, exactly. No, that's right. Yeah, you're in trouble. So they're doing everything to prevent it, yet their market's going sideways now for almost a year. That's called a dead cat bounce, which means you've got another bubble burst coming in China. So sometime this year, a couple things are going to happen. One is first, more likely or sooner, Italy has a huge debt crisis. It's close to default. Deutsche Bank is flaming out, as well as other Italian banks. Germany has the worst demographics in the world, like Japan I saw in the 1990s ahead of time. So we're going to have a blow up in Germany and Southern Europe. Second thing, at some point, and it may take longer because the Chinese do have so much power of their economy, the China bubble is going to blow, and that's going to be the death knell. But I tell you something between now and then, Trump's got a big problem that he doesn't see. He says he's going to grow the economy 4% by cutting taxes and regulations. He doesn't understand a couple things. Demographics are terrible. Our workforce is going to be negative growth, slightly negative growth for decades to come, and more so in the next several years. And the only reason jobs have been growing is we've been hiring back the people we laid off in 2008 and 9 in the Great Recession. We haven't been growing the workforce. Businesses haven't been investing in new capacity. Baby boomers have been retiring. That makes less and less labor force participation. So a lot of these people that left, and you can see in this chart, aren't coming back. In fact, we've gone from 67% when the baby boomers started to retire in this black line you can see. We're at 62.5 now. This says by 2024, we're going to go to 58%. We're going to lose another 4.5% of our workforce. How do you create growth in a shrinking workforce? Number two, another chart I have shows productivity. That's the only other way to grow.
All right, let me stop you, Mr. Dent, and I want you to harrydent.com. People can find your best-selling books there. And we'll talk about those too when we come back from break and take some calls that cover the waterfront. I want your comment on all these. But look, you didn't believe, or some people didn't believe, Trump could win. He's beat a lot of odds. Innovation, as I said earlier, could change the paradigm. We're in a very advanced civilization now. I agree with you historically on the trends. You've been proven right. I hope you're wrong about this. All I'm saying is, if we have super innovation, a lot of technologies released, a lot of construction that's being done on highways and roads, if he can hustle a lot of factories to be built and jobs be created, there's a major hustle factor in humans. Even if the demographics aren't good, if you get those that are working even harder and producing more, couldn't that have an escape velocity out of this trend?
Well, no, we're already back at full employment, which means we've hired back all those people that wanted jobs. A lot of people left and won't come back. Why? Because a lot of two-earning couples, when their kids get out of college, they say the wife stops working or works part-time.
So the problem is the baby boomers deserve to take it easy. The problem is if they do, we're going to implode.
We're going to implode. So with zero productivity, old people don't get more productive. They get less productive. We're going to see productivity. It's now near zero. It's going to go even lower into 2024 before it starts to turn around again. So if we got workforce shrinking in the next several years and productivity going from near zero, the lowest since the early 80s, when the Bob Hope generation was retiring rapidly, how are you going to create 4% growth? And companies aren't going to invest in new capacity because there is no demand.
Sure. So the Republicans green-lighted bringing in immigrants who we need. The Democrats only want to bring people that want to be on welfare, the worst type. So now we have an even bigger disaster. How do we get immigrants that we need?
Well, that's what Australia and Canada do. We should be studying them. They identify the skills they need. They make you meet requirements.
And then we brain drain everybody. I don't care what color you are, just as long as you want to work hard.
The smart ones back home.
Yeah.
And we let let the lowest quality immigrants just come over the border. So we have the worst immigration policy, even though we attract more than most countries, and that's good for demographics, but it's not as good as attracting. When I speak in Australia, a third of the people there are Asian, and those immigrants have higher than average educations and incomes, not lower. So they really are a plus for the country.
Sure, they're getting the brain drain of the best.
Yes, and again, here we attract people to our universities more than any country around the world, and then we have quotas and push most of them back to the countries. I read an article where a guy was kicked out of Microsoft, sent back to China, and within 2 years he started $100 million business.
No, exactly, because it's an admitted globalist plan to not let America be dominant. We only take on people that basically are low-skilled because it's all about a control system. It's incredible. Harry Dent is hard to disagree with. I'm going to come back and play a clip of Ron Paul yesterday, basically agreeing with him and see where he goes from there, and then also take your phone calls from around the world. So Mike, Kirk, James, Josie, and John and others, stay with us. We'll be back. Harry Dent's our guest. We've got callers from all over the United States and the world with great questions. They want to ask the guests about Red China, economy, and currency. That's Mike. Debbie wants to talk about bankers, American wealth. James wants to talk about Trump will deliver on promises. Jose wants to talk about Trump's wall, legal Mexican citizen in the U.S. We're going to go to him first. He's been holding a long time. John in Florida wants to talk about Trump's Muslim ban, disapproves. It's bans from countries that are exporting Islamic terror and where we haven't been vetting their visas and where we don't have a visa vetting office. And the media spins all that. But we'll talk about it all. And we also have a sale of a lifetime on Dent's new book. He's going to tell you about here in just a moment. Before I go any further, some of the new articles that I was just mentioning. U.S. elites buying New Zealand redoubts to escape crack-up of civilization. That's the New Yorker magazine. Millionaires fleeing Chicago over fear of civil unrest. Why the elite are buying secret hideaways. We've been reporting on this for a long time. This is now being admitted. But separately, Dems to David Brock, stop helping, you're killing us. So that's an article in the Daily Beast that just came out today. They're eating their own. David Brock is a horrible, horrible, horrible person and just gets White House directives, Hillary directives, you name it. They're telling him, you're white, you're not welcome. So the new thing is having everybody go prostrate themselves who want to be DNC chairs and announce how white people are inherently evil. The Democratic Party is like a reverse KKK group now, but led by white people. Screaming how bad whites are. I probably had women tell me, no exaggeration, 300 times during the Women's March I covered in D.C. last week, you're an effing white male, and all of them were white women. I never had black women or Hispanic women. There were a few of those there scream at me. It was like they kind of looked bewildered. It's like these weird gatekeeping white people that are trying to use race baiting to control. It's crazy. We've got two big specials running at InfoWarsStore.com. DNA Force, our top nutraceutical with 170-plus studies on nerve regrowth factor, and so much more. We also have a lot of other things going on right now with Super Male Vitality. Those are both about to sell out. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com, or 888-253-3139. And you can see the big effect this crazed broadcast is having to crash with the lies and disinformation. Your support now more than ever is essential, and I salute you and thank you for it. But more importantly, these are great products. Our water filtration systems are the best out there for gravity-fed systems. We've got the best non-GMO heirloom seeds, the best Trump is my president shirts, all of it. Game-changing stuff at InfoWarsStore.com, so be sure and shop with the good guys and check all that out today, and thank you for your support in making this possible. Okay, Mr. Dent, let's get into your new book and the different work you're up to and any other points you want to hit, and then I want to let the callers have at it with you.
Yeah, I mean, this book, we show all of our demographic cycles from micro to macro and globally, and who's strong and who's not and where it's going to hit and all this stuff we do. We've updated all that, but we most focus on bubbles. We don't see bubbles because we're getting something for nothing. It's like a drug that makes us feel good. Our houses are going up 2 to 3 times as fast as normal. We're doing nothing. Our stock portfolio is going up. We're doing nothing. Our mortgages cost, 20% less because of governments have pushed interest rates to near zero, adjusted for inflation. Our car loans are cheaper, on and on and on. So you got to recognize a bubble, because when bubbles do finally crash, and we only see a bubble economy once in a lifetime, like the Roaring '20s, which did end up in the Great Depression, people's wealth, I mean, across the board, housing, real estate, gold, everything gets wiped out in a short period of time. Unemployment goes up. A lot of businesses go under, banks go
under.
under.
And by the way, I'm going to read your book because I want to be positioned. Explain to me the basics, though, of what you break down in The Sale of a Lifetime.
Well, again, we look at bubbles around the world, past and present, so people say, you know, this is what a bubble looks like. Everybody says, oh, this isn't a bubble because. No, bubbles all look the same and act the same and all crash the same, and there's no soft landings for bubbles. So that's the first point. We also look at all four of key indicators I've generated over the last 30 years. I started with demographics. That was my breakthrough. But I added a geopolitical cycle, which has been horrible since 9/11 and still is bad for the next 3 or 4 years. So this stuff's not going to get better. We have an innovation cycle that peaked with the internet recently. Now we're down to Facebook, which is entertaining, but it's dancing cats and dogs. It's not the sort of productivity tool that Google was, and email and stuff. Those things tripled my productivity in my research business. And then I have a secrets recipe for a 10-year boom bust cycle. The point is, we show all four of these cycles point down at the same time, starting in mid-2014, and don't start to turn up until early 2020. So the next 3.5 years is the most dangerous time for our economy. And unfortunately, Trump, somebody who can actually has the leeway to make some major changes, is walking into a difficult economy, as did Herbert Hoover. He was a major businessman that got elected president, walked in office in 1929, just in time to see the greatest crash in history start later that year. I see a similar scenario, that this Trump rally lasts until around July or mid this year. All of a sudden, jobs growth shrivels up because we've hired back all the people and there's nobody else left to hire. And our workforce, as I showed earlier, is not, in fact, is
sure. What do you make of them raising interest rates, and the IMF and World Bank and others and the ECB signaling that as well?
Well, again, governments and central banks have been pushing down interest rates short-term and, more importantly, long-term with quantitative easing. That has gotten overdone, and negative rates started to backfire on banks and the economy in Japan and Europe. So now interest rates are rising. We are seeing some late-stage inflation, which we've been warning for the last year. We did predict that bond rates would go up. The 10-year Treasury from 1.38% to about 3%, and we're about 70% of the way there. Interest rates going up is not good for stocks or real estate or lending and business in general. So these trends are all starting to go against. And as we say, you can't get something for nothing. Governments can't just print free money and think there aren't consequences. Inflation is not the big consequence that the gold bugs thought. It's the fact that you create even bigger bubbles in stocks and real estate. This stock bubble now we show in the book is way larger than the last one that crashed 55% in 2008 and 9. We're predicting a 70 to 80% crash in the next 3 years.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think is causing the Trump euphoria? I mean, the fact that we're saying we're open for business, we're going to cut regulations. I mean, this sounds pretty positive. I think Trump might be able to escape all this. It's kind of like they famously have the New York Times economists claiming the internet would stall out and wouldn't stop, would stop innovating by 1998. He was wrong. I mean, I really just have a lot of positive hopes, and I hope you're wrong.
Yeah, wrong timing, though. One of the points we've made in all of my books, all the way back to 1989. Economy goes in 4 seasons: a spring boom, a summer stagnation and recession with high inflation, then a fall bubble boom, and that's the best season for stocks and real estate and economy. But then those bubbles and debt bubbles burst.
Sure, I want to take calls, but let's talk about triggers then. What's the time frame? What are some of the triggers you're worried about?
Okay, again, like I said earlier, Italy's just around the corner from default. They got 18% bad loans, non-performing and rising. 10% you're technically bankrupt. Greece is still as bad as ever, never turned around. Cyprus, same old. And Portugal and all of Southern Europe's got very bad economies, very bad debt. And Germany, who's supposed to be the strongest economy, has the worst demographic trends in the next decade, worse than Japan had in the 90s when they crashed.
And it's not even safe to go outside at night in most areas, and France have jihadis running around murdering everybody.
Highest terrorism over there. Europe's going to blow, especially Southern Europe and Germany. The second big trigger is China. China's bubble is totally unsustainable. Their debt has gone up 16 times in the last decade, makes our debt bubble and any other debt bubble in history look like nothing. They're going to blow. But I think the surprise this year, Alex, is that this 150 to 200,000 job growth all of a sudden later this year just shrivels up and stops because there's nobody left to hire. And companies are not, even if they repatriate $2 trillion in overseas profits, they're not going to put it in new capacity and jobs because there is no demand. Consumers are tapped out at peak debt. Demographic trends point down until 2022 before they.
Sure, but let me raise this point. Trump may be right, and I hope he is. So far, he's been right. If you've got such massive regulations by globalists to force us to ship our jobs to Asia and other areas because globalists could pick the winners in a crony capitalist model, if he does slash regulations by 75% and cut taxes, that boom could be so explosive that despite demographic problems, if you look at the metrics, it could still be a lot bigger than even the demographic downturn and take us out of this.
Yeah. Regulations are much more complex to deal with than simply cutting taxes. And it's only going to reduce some cost. The point is, you can't expand businesses when you don't have demand. Here's the problem. When Reagan came in the early 80s, he was coming in after the biggest supply crisis in history. That's what the highest inflation rates were telling you. We need supply, supply, supply. That's when cutting taxes, cutting regulations, as he did, expands. Businesses will expand, and that's when the baby boomers were starting to spend. So that strategy works. To come in, we have the opposite now. We have overcapacity, more so in China than anywhere, but all around the world. Businesses overborrowed and expanded. Consumers overborrowed and spent and bought homes and stuff in the bubble boom. And now we don't have growing demand.
Well, I got to say this. A lot of, in general, you're absolutely right. Historical, you're the pioneer of that with the trends up and down and the demographics. It's just that, you admit, though, that Trump beat the odds and that things have been happening that don't normally happen. And I think with globalism and all the complexities and different systems and the fact that time is kind of compacted now and there's so many developments, I think there's going to be curveballs in the natural order of markets that you've absolutely been right about exposing.
Here's the problem, Alex. He's creating unrealistic expectations. If he came in and told people, and he said we're in a big, fat, ugly bubble. Well, bubbles always burst, and you can't just walk through them with no consequences. It's devastating. Hey, our demographics, hey, we are an aging society, and we need to do X, Y, Z to do it. If he said, here's what we need to do it, and I'm going to do these things, but to say I'm going to almost instantly create 4% growth, I guarantee.
Do you know what would unify us? Okay.
A huge disappointment.
I guarantee you our economy would explode if they announced, I'm saying this hypothetically before the New York Times runs with it, that I say it's real. If they picked up an alien fleet that was, 20 million miles out and was telling us, because of their rules of war, we're going to attack you when we get there, I guarantee you, say it's takes them 5 years to get here, our economy is going to explode no matter what the demographics are, and we're going to have all these weapon systems and space bases and stuff we never thought we'd have and super weapons rolled out, because that's what humans do in times of war, is they accelerate to the next level. So a giant war, either with aliens or with the Chinese or anybody, if we don't kill each other, could save us from the economy. I'm not saying that should be done.
World War II, what we did, women went in the workforce because the men were gone fighting, so that was a big leap forward. This time, the only way we could do with that and ramp up, we'd have to put a lot of old people to work, and that'd be a good thing. Baby boomers shouldn't be retiring at age 63 when they now live to 85 if they meet that age. That wasn't true when we created all these welfare systems and Social Security and healthcare entitlements. So
you agree with me, though, if we knew there was a giant military threat that would destroy us in 5 years, we would mobilize?
That is what it would take to beat my forecast. Just cutting taxes or regulations, I'm telling you, is not going to create this 4% growth. Yes, an alien invasion and everybody goes back to work, including 65-year-olds and 75-year-olds, men and women. Yes, that's the only thing that would create this sort of growth.
Well, the globalists kind of like our alien invasion of communists and socialists and robber barons, so I think in the fight against the globalists, we all just bust our ass and work hard and politically defeat them and make an industry out of it. I think we can stop them. I think this is next level stuff. We have to make it work to defeat them, or they're going to use the collapse, not to go with your great free market ideas or Ron Paul's great ideas. They're going to use it to totally bring in tyranny. Let's play a clip of Ron Paul yesterday agreeing with Mr. Dent. and then we'll come back to Mr. Dent after the Ron Paul clip. Do you guys have it ready yet? All right. We'll get to that Ron Paul clip here in just a moment, and then we will take a few of your phone calls with Harry Dent. He's got his new book, The Sale of a Lifetime. Here it is. Here is Ron Paul.
I'll tell you what, he has a short amount of time, and I think he's sincerely trying. And when he talks about taxes and regulation, I think he's doing a great job. But the whole thing is, let's say there are some dire predictions that, you know, next year, or say a year and 18 months, we have something arriving worse than 2008 and 2009. The downturn is much worse. And they'll say, it's all Trump's fault, it's all Trump's fault. No, it wasn't. 08 and 09 wasn't Obama's fault. It was the fault of the Federal Reserve. It was the fault of the Keynesian economic model, the spending too much, the deficit. So, unfortunately, there's nothing he can do. Trump can't do it. He can help, you know, by some of these policies, but you can't avoid the correction. The correction is locked in place because the deficits are there, the malinvestment. Everybody agrees.
That's right.
Interest rates have been too low, too long.
And that's why he's racing. The full interview's up on Infowars.com. I need to go to these calls as I promised to. But Mr. Dent, quick comment to that.
Yeah, I agree totally. Everything he's doing could work long term, but it takes a while to set in. And cutting taxes only increases deficits. We got runaway deficit. The debt has been doubling every two administrations, 5 to 10 trillion under Bush, 10 to 20 under Obama, and it's going to 40 trillion in the next two administrations unless something is done to deal with these runaway deficits, and they're going to get much worse when the economy goes down. So I agree with that. Trump can't deal with that, and it's not his fault.
Well, he's sure trying. He's sure delivering on what he said he would do. It's amazing.
And he can help. He can help, but you can't offset. This is like a tidal wave, and you're putting a fire hose into it. There's too many negative trends.
Well, we'll see what happens. I hope you're wrong. We've been seeing a lot of interesting things happen. That Buck...
I would have advised Trump to run next time around if I'd have been his advisor.
Well, but he's already the oldest president to ever get inaugurated. So he can't run when he's 74, but I hear you. Let's go to James in Texas, then we'll go to Jose and John and others. James, go ahead.
Hi, Alex. I'd like to use this call in order to get an extremely important message that I composed out to you as well as Trump's administration.
Yeah, I'm not screening your call. I mean, I probably have to let you go, though, because you've been holding. I've gone to you on air, so.
Okay. We aren't far from Tomorrowland, as it's famously quoted by Walt Disney back in the mid-'50s. All we have to do is fund the proper organizations such as NASA to train the next generations of rocket, propulsion, and space engineers as well as scientists.
Okay. Again, there's this paradigm. People call in and they tell me what they want to say and then they just wait. So you're on air. Go ahead.
Well, right. But I want to get your take on space exploration and...
Yes, humans need projects and goals to put their energy into and then to have a destiny. And if we don't start moving off the planet, moving to the deep sea, doing really dangerous stuff, cheering space colonies that launch, even though we'll probably have technology in 20 years where our ships, you know, go out and relieve the ships that were using earlier technology. We have to do that. We have to make our reality shows be beam transmissions back from deep space probes. We have to make innovation and science and trailblazers our rock stars. Since we made drugged out musicians and spoiled rotten Hollywood people our gods and a bunch of arrogant sports people our gods, the Renaissance has begun to die. Mr. Dent, I mean, what about big projects getting us out of this?
Well, again, it'd have to be huge, and they take a long time to pay off. I mean, I study innovation more than anybody. I mean, automobiles took decades before they really paid off and created growth in the economy. And all of that investment would only create bigger deficits if the government did something like that near term. So, yeah, long term, these things can be a good thing to do if you pick the right projects. But near term, they're not going to do anything but make things worse for the economy when we
all right, thank you. James, I wasn't being mean. People just come on air and always say what they want to say. When you're on air, you're on air. I know other talk shows screen you a bunch, and then you get on air. We're putting you on air. Thank you, James. John in Florida, you're on the air with Mr. Dent.
Hey, buddy. I originally was going to call about the Muslims. I'm not for registering anybody, including sex offenders, anybody. I'll just say that. and keep it in conversation with what y'all are talking about out of respect for the author, I want to ask him first off, does he has his book in audio book form?
Yes, is your new book in audio form?
It is coming out in audio form with Gildan. I don't think it's quite out yet.
Now, that's what I like. I like
yeah.
books on audio when I drive in the car. I don't really read books anymore. I listen to them on audio.
I would get the book, though, because it's very timely. I mean, people are going to have to make some hard decisions in the next several months.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to order the book. I'm thinking about this. Yeah. Anything else, John?
Yes, if Trump were in the 80s, I think what he's got working against him the most, unfortunately, I agree with Mr. Dent. I wish I didn't. I think he's got Facebook, Twitter, these kind of things. If you go in a restaurant nowadays, talking about productivity, people are just zombies out there now. I drive on the road for a living. I drive a truck. And I cannot tell you the things that I see out here with people doing 70 miles an hour with their phone, sending out a LOL. People are just zombies. So the productivity, unfortunately, it's just not going to be
That's right.
there.
Television and smartphones is killing productivity.
Yeah, that's right. This could be negative productivity because people basically just goofing off on Facebook all the time. It's entertainment. It distracts you.
Well, let's expand on that. I mean, it kills businesses, operations, newsrooms. I'm always like, get off the phones and check on your Facebook and produce something. Don't just be a Facebook star. Don't just, be a Twitter star. Actually fight the globalists. And our crew does a great job at that. It's just that's an ongoing thing in every newsroom. Great points, John. Thank you so much for the call. Let's go ahead and go to Debbie in New Jersey. You're on the air, and then Mike and others. Then Jose.
Hi, Mr. Dent. Alex. Government has turned us all into corporations, taking away our individual sovereignty and thus creating House Joint Resolution 192, Treasury accounts for us all. Why won't they allow us access to these accounts?
Are you talking about Americans being leveraged against the national debt?
Well, basically that the banks hold us hostage. So when you go for a mortgage, your signature gives them the ability to go into your account.
Sure. Let me jump to the guest about that because we're almost out of time. I want to go to Jose, who's been holding. I used to always hear that like they sell mortgages over and over again and they use your name for debt on the mortgage. And I rolled my eyes 20 years ago, but then it came out they really were doing something like that.
Well, I mean, to me, the biggest issue over the last decades is debt normally grows when a generation is aging and raising their families in that part of their cycle. So you'd expect that more and more mortgages. But the whole banking system kind of colluded, along with the Fed, to push interest rates lower than they should be, make loans easier to get, no down payments, no documentation, and created a much bigger debt bubble for consumers and real estate bubble than would have already happened naturally. So the bigger the bubble, the bigger the burst. That's the whole point of the book. And so we've got a bigger crisis than we'll see in our lifetimes coming in the next 3 to 6 years. Again, I agree with Ron Paul. So much has happened so already that there's no way to get around this bubble bursting and debts failing and stocks going
Sure, well,
down.
then all I hope Trump does is cultural things to fight political correctness. And I mean, it's a culture of liberty that is our real wealth generator in the end. So I think for the future, we should win the culture war.
Yeah, and I want to see with new technologies, they really favor the individual and entrepreneurs. And I want to see more of that come out of this other side. It's going to be good if a lot of major institutions fail and have to restructure, including banks.
Sure, because they're the ones that have been creating the monopolies. Let's talk to Jose.
That's right. They've been creating the monopolies and a lot of the problems.
Jose in California, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Alex, for the wonderful information. I'm Mexican, but most of Mexicans, I support Trump and voted for Trump, and I support the wall. I mean, it's got to be done. Most Mexicans are racist. They hate USA. They hate their own people. Only few love America. Only few. I know many illegals working here, sending money to Mexico, and still hate USA. Always.
I think some folks get bullied into that, but I mean, the Hispanics I know that are from Mexico, or families were, especially when this was already Mexico. I mean, they love America. I mean, you really think? I mean, are you talking about illegals hate America? I mean, I know they've kind of been brainwashed into that, but
right. Yeah. You know what? What about Mexicans or Latinos at the inauguration? I didn't see any. Or what happened to them?
I saw a ton of people of every color there. I actually saw that. I don't think the media likes to show that, but they have been somewhat successful creating the idea that you can't be for free market if you're a minority. saying the Tea Party's racist. That's not really the case. I think Trump's message is very, very inclusive. But I hear what you're saying, Jose. Let me have you come back here in just a moment. But Mr. Dent, what do you think about what Jose's saying?
Well, I tell you, immigration has long ago peaked. Immigration comes in cycles. We had the biggest wave of immigration peak just before World War I and then fall off in the roaring 20s and go to zero in the Great Depression. I think immigration's already peaked. We've had net zero immigration from Mexico for many years now after the Great Recession. The jobs don't look so good.
Sure, but the issue is we're not getting the hardworking people like we were. The Democrats were saying, literally, if you're handicapped, come here, we'll take care of you. So we got people that aren't just low skill. We've got a bunch of people that are drags from all over the world. But
on the other hand, also, though, as many people are going back to Mexico as coming, and that's probably...
Yeah, the people that know this country's falling apart, they're going down there. A lot of areas of Mexico are actually booming. That's what's weird.
Yeah. They're doing better than we are because their demographics aren't bad like ours is. So this is going to naturally happen anyway. To build a wall...
Hold on, I know you got to go, but 70 seconds. Come back and do 5 minutes and finish your point. Mr. Dent's our guest. Get his new book, The Sale of a Lifetime. I'm Alex Jones. Get Stone's new book at our site about the making of the president, InfoWarsStore.com. We'll be back with the fourth hour. Well, we're living on the edge. Harry Dent is our guest, HarryDent.com. I'm Alex Jones. Harry, we've talked about so much. We've got a few more callers for you here. But in closing, any other angles that you haven't gotten into that you'd like to break down?
Well, again, people have to realize if you get out of the bubble, if you convert overvalued stocks, overvalued real estate, especially stuff that's not strategic to your life or business, into cash or safer investments like treasury bonds and AAA corporate bonds. These are the things that did well the entire Great Depression while everything else crashed. This is what creates a sale of a lifetime. You can be able to buy anything you want, from beachfront property to gold to companies or stocks long-term at 10, 20, 30 cents on the dollar. But you can't do it if you lose all your wealth on the way down. So again, that's why I say, look, get on my free newsletter at harrydent.com. Read this book now. Don't wait for the audio. Get it at Amazon, because you're going to have to make some hard decisions probably by mid this year, if I'm right, and I want you to be informed. You're not going to do these things unless you're convinced I'm right. And I think most people that really read our books and get our stuff, we're telling the truth about fundamentals, and we're not coming up with, oh, this will somehow work out because this and that. Look, I was the most bullish economist in the world in the 80s and 90s. I'm bearish now because, like Ron Paul said, all of these trends, boom, debt, bubbles have gone so far, they have to go the other way. And you can only live off of free money and something for nothing economics for so long.
But Trump had to lose. You weren't saying that, but Trump had to lose and he won. There's a lot of interesting things that happen in the world, especially with all the high-tech systems we have. But
again, he'd be fine if he warned people more about some of the extremes like Ron Paul just did.
You know, I think he's been doing it. The media doesn't cover it.
The situation better likely. It's just the situation's going to be bad no matter what he does, and he's going to get blamed for it if he promised people we're going to get 4% growth overnight. Not going to happen. Mark my words on that.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I tell you, just the exuberance might create just the enthusiasm, because so much of this downturn has been lack of enthusiasm.
For a few months, but not for long. You can't live on exuberance for very long.
I hope you're wrong, but we're here. I respect you. You're a smart guy, and that's why we're covering all the angles. You know, we're not kind of like CNN or whatever, will kind of have its agenda, or CNBC. We're here really trying to figure this out, as you know. Let's take one more call for you. Let's talk to Mike in Illinois. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call. Alex, I have to go with Mr. Dent on this one, because I've been reading articles and things about the AIIB, which is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and how China's been able to corral 57 countries to sign on to this. And from what I've kind of gathered, that maybe their plan is to depeg the petrodollar and have everything based on another currency. And if something like that would happen,
that would blow the economy up even faster. Look, for any of the U.S.'s problems, China is undoubtedly a basket case. So
yeah, and China's economy is much more vulnerable than ours. Everybody thinks they're so strong. They have their debt ratios and their leverage, and they're overbuilding. They've overbuilt their economy 10 to 15 years ahead. They wouldn't need to build anything for a long time. So if something goes wrong, China, we're still the best house in a bad neighborhood compared to Europe or Japan, and including China by far.
And Trump's smart getting Japan and Russia geopolitically on our side. against China. I think Trump's really smart.
Yeah.
By the way, Ron Paul also commended him and said he thinks Trump's doing a great job, but he, like he said, a day late, $1 short.
Yep, exactly.
Well, cross your fingers. Hey, I thank you so much, Mike, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Who knows what could happen with China and all these other, quote, countries. We'll see what unfolds. All right, well, Harry Dent, harrydent.com, the new book. It's got a great name. You're a great author, so I haven't seen my complimentary one yet, but maybe we should sell it at the Infowars store. Let's have you talk to some of the crew, have Weldon give you a call. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Coming up, I'm going to ask a question of the man who created the term fake news, exposing the mainstream media, and of course, that's John Rappaport. And I'm going to ask him, what do you think they're doing with such blatant fake news? Is it just trying to distract us from other issues? Because we're exposing them on every front, and they just lose more and more credibility. So what's really going on in psychological warfare? We'll be back. Infowars.com is the website. Stay with us. This has been adopted as of 2017 by the Department of Defense. All 4 branches of the military, Combat One. And guess who in the spring of 2017 has the exclusive right to sell this to everybody else but the military? Infowars.com. I want to commend Q and Patrick and the rest of our team. I want to commend Combat One for getting the big Pentagon deal. And I want to thank them for supporting us because they know we support America. We are the exclusive source of Combat One skin and muscle optimization, field foam, field spray, skin and muscle optimization, and broad spectrum hygiene tactical bath. Contains 8 pre-moistened cloths. Ladies and gentlemen, these are incredibly affordable, and they have patented proprietary systems that annihilate germs, you name it, across the board. That's why it's been adopted by the Pentagon, by the Defense Department, system-wide. I'm going to go over some of the numbers, some of the proven statistics, and the claims that Combat One can make right now. Never before has the public been able to access this new Combat One military-grade hygiene technology used by special operations to maintain hygiene during survival situations. Studied for safety and effectiveness by St. John's Medical Research Institute, St. Jude's, and the American Journal of Infection Control. The technology behind Combat One wipes kills bad bacteria while leaving beneficial skin bacteria unharmed. That's the key buffer. The toxic wipes, the sanitizers kill everything, including your immune system. They lower your fertility. It's all admitted. Combat One is able to do this naturally by only targeting the bad stuff. And again, it's all patented. It's super secret. 12 years, Special Forces testing it. This is something every info warrior needs to order, needs to have in their home, needs to use in their daily lives, whether it's cleaning your guns or your own skin or when you're out camping. This is the game changer. The entire family of Combat One is available exclusively at InfoWarsStore.com.
Just coming back from the river where I was using one of our water filtration straws, a certain device we sell here at InfoWarsStore.com, and I had smacked my knuckle pretty hard the other day with my knife after cleaning one of the animals. So I want to use some Combat One foam, show you guys that we actually use it, how well it works. This wound's been open for about 5 days now. I just dipped it in and out of the river, so just a better safe than sorry. Once I let that soak in, I'll wrap it up, field dress, and nice and clean again.
And it certainly is coming to the rescue with Combat One, born in America, made in America, and now distributed by InfoWars to America.